Hi guys, it is Aoife from Fred VC Died Laughing, and I'm here with a weekly wrap up that is actually going up on a Sunday for the first time in a few weeks, so go me. This week was Booktubeathon week. Booktubeathon is not quite over yet, it is over tomorrow, I think. So I am still going with that, but I got loads read this week. In total so far I've gotten 7 books read this week. One of them I had been reading from last weekend, so it doesn't quite count for Booktubeathon, but I'm kind of counting it anyway. One was a graphic novel and one was an audiobook that I've been reading for the past month as well. And I will get on with my wrap up now and tell you everything that I've read, because obviously I have a lot to talk about. The first book I finished was The Obelisk by N.K. Jemisin. This is the second book in the Broken Earth trilogy. The first book is the 5th season. This is kind of a science fiction fantasy book about a world that is basically almost like one continent, and it is plagued by things they call seasons. So they're kind of like earthquakes, magical disruptions that can really basically almost end humankind every kind of few generations. And each time there is like an earth-shattering disaster that is a season. So we are in the 5th season at the moment in this trilogy. And there are people in this world called origins who can kind of almost help control the earthquakes and the earth, the movements of the earth, so cause them as well. So we are following a character called Essen, who is one of these origins, and in this book we are also following her daughter called Nassin. And we are following on obviously what happened in the first book, so obviously I can't say too much about what is happening, but what I will say is I really enjoyed this one. I definitely enjoyed The Obelisk more than I enjoyed the 5th season. I just felt like I was more connected to the characters, I understood the world and the story better. I thought it was a lot more fast paced than the first one as well. I felt like this one went really quickly. It was very easy to read as well, and I really enjoyed having the extra POV of Nassin, because we'd obviously heard a bit about her in the first book in the 5th season, so to have her point of view and see kind of her own training with being an origin and how powerful she is, and seeing kind of the different ways she is training apart from Essen. I just thought that was really interesting, and I really enjoyed that take. And to be quite honest, I did say it in my vlog as well, that which will be going up on Tuesday or Wednesday. A lot of the stuff that is happening in this book, and a lot of like kind of the science behind everything that is happening, I don't think about too much, because otherwise it would just confuse me. I kind of just accept it as it is, and I'm just like, well, this is what is happening in this world, and I don't really need to know too much about why everything is happening, what exactly makes all these things happen, and what makes these people be the way they are. I just go along with it. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The book I read was The Rules of Seeing by Jo Heap. This is a book I got from NetGalley, and this also was for Booktubeathon. It was for the challenge to read a book with green on the cover, so as you can see there is a beautiful cover that has green on it. This follows 2 different characters, following a character called Nova who was born blind, and in this book she ends up getting an operation to restore her sight, and she ends up having kind of a really difficult time in seeing and relearning the world as she knows it, because she's been blind her entire life, and she's known things certain ways, and now she has to kind of relearn everything. She has to learn like what things mean, she has to learn words, she has to learn pictures, and we are kind of following her in this journey of learning that she is going through, and the hardships that she is feeling and the anxiety she is feeling. And we are also following a character called Kate, and Kate is going through kind of a troubled marriage, and Nova and Kate meet in the hospital originally, and then they meet at a doctor's office again a few months later, and we are just seeing how the 2 of them kind of seem to find something in each other that they just really connect with, and just the relationships and the feelings that are blossoming between them as they grow closer. And I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the first half of it a lot more than the second half though. I really thought this was going to be like a 4 to 5 star read. When I was reading the first half, I just really thought that Nova, particularly as a character, is really infectious. She's written really well. I really enjoyed her journey. I really enjoyed her journey and her growth, and just seeing, like, I just thought it was really interesting seeing how as a former blind person she had to relearn everything. And I've never really thought about that, but how much a person who was blind would have to learn, how much their life would change, and how hard it would be, and how much of a struggle it would be, to the point where, you know, she is almost wishing that she was blind again. And I just thought that was a really interesting story to follow, and an interesting story to tell as well. There were some really interesting like points that Nova made as well about things like food, how food looks was like so repulsive to her compared to how it smelled, because food was always, you know, food always smells so heavenly a lot of the time, and then she saw how it looked and it just really grossed her out. And I've never really thought about that before, about how good food smells compared to how it looks, and that was just really funny for me, and I just really enjoyed that kind of observation. In terms of Kate's character, I felt Kate was very much like she's going through a lot of really, really hard things in her marriage, and an accident she has at the start of the book, and she has a lot of anxiety and agoraphobia over that as well. And we are seeing her struggle, and we are seeing the lack of support she's getting at home, and how she's kind of reaching out to Nova for the support that she's not getting at home. And that's kind of hard to read a lot of the time. But again, as I said, I think the second half of this book just really, really dragged. I think the book was maybe a bit too long. Things seemed to take a really things seemed to take a while to happen when we knew exactly what was going to happen. And yeah, I just really didn't like the second half of the book. It just really fell down for me. So it ended up being like a 3.5 stars instead of like a solid 4 stars. So that was a bit disappointing for me, but I would recommend this book even just for the first half, which I thought was really, really good and I really enjoyed. The second half just completely ran away with itself, and it just went a little bit crazy at times as well, which I just didn't really like. The next book I read was Stable Lass by Gemma Hogg. This is a non-fiction book, and this was for the challenge, which is I think to read about a career that you would have wanted. So this is obviously about a young girl who when she's 16-17 she leaves school and she goes to work in a racing yard as a stable lass, and she's just kind of telling her own stories about just life, what life is like working in a racing yard and working with racehorses, and just the different kind of, it's like just a few different tales and stories and people she knew and people she met and the lessons she learned, and like it was simple and fun. It was a nice read, and I enjoyed it for what it was, which was just a bit of simple fun for me. For me, as someone who loves horses, who once thought about maybe being a jockey, which through one wild moment, I think after I finished college and I didn't know what the hell I was going to do with myself, I did actually start thinking about whether I could apply to be a jockey. So yeah, I just enjoyed it for like the horsey goodness. I think parts of it were like a little bit simple, and parts of it again, even like the humour sometimes was a little bit simplistic at times in it, and I don't really know why. And I just found myself being like, oh, okay. But most of all, for the books, for the horses, for the horse stories, for the whole racing thing, I really enjoyed, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I finished was Saga by Brian K. Vaughan. This is volume 4 of Saga, and this is like a science fiction graphic novel series following two people who were once on opposite sides of this massive war, and now they are on the run with their baby daughter, and basically everyone is trying to kill them because they are enemies who fell in love. They're a little bit like Romeo and Juliet in a way, star-crossed lovers, and the whole story is kind of being told from the future by the daughter, so it's like really interesting. I really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed this one. This is probably the one I've enjoyed the most since the first one. Like this would be a 5 stars in terms of graphic novels, but a 4-star generally, because I don't know, I feel weird giving graphic novels 5 stars. I've said this before. So I gave it a 4 stars, which is technically a 5-star in graphic novel sense. Yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. I thought the end bit as well, like literally the last picture in this, like the last page, I was just like, like I really wanted the next one straight away. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading the next one now, and yeah, I can't wait. The next book I read was Peter Pan by JM Barrie. This was for the BookTube-a-thon challenge of read a book and watch the film adaptation. I still have not read the film, I still have not watched the film adaptation of this, which was going to be the live action Peter Pan. Maybe I will do tonight. Just haven't gotten around to it. I was going to do it the other night and then I didn't. I like watched the opening credits and then I didn't watch the rest of it. So yeah, I really need to do that. But I really enjoyed rereading this. This is one of my favourite stories of all time. This is just has so many beautiful quotations in it, and I just love how whimsical and fun and silly it is, and yeah, it's just so much fun and I just love it. And like, this is not the Disney version of Peter Pan that we know. It's a little bit different. It's actually a little bit darker at times. Peter Pan is a little bit more evil like in this, but he's not like really evil, but there's some things that he does that like we know that like he's not all Disney, but I really enjoy that. So I really enjoyed this and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars as always. This book I read was Salt by Colin F. Barnes. This wasn't really for any challenge, it was just, you know, read 7 books. And this is a book I do actually have off on NetGalley, but I did actually buy it on Amazon as well by accident, without realising that I also had it on NetGalley. That's when you know you have a NetGalley problem. This is a post-apocalyptic thriller, basically set after these like basically the entire world has flooded, so I don't think there's like any land left, and there's this thing called a flotilla, so it's like basically a colony of different boats and yachts and stuff that are all together just off, I think, the coast of Mexico, and we are following these people who live in this flotilla. They've lived there for about 3 years since this disaster has happened, and as we are literally as we start the book, a few people are being sent off. These volunteers are being sent off to basically try and find something better. And we're following a character called Eva, who was once a homicide detective, I think in like Baltimore or somewhere, and she is intimate with a man who's been sent off, and literally as soon as he is sent off, all these weird things start happening. There are murders, there seems to be a lot of like subterfuge happening, and Eva is just like determined to get to the bottom of it, and she starts investigating to try and figure out what is happening, what are these secrets that seem to be concealed on this flotilla. Is it something to do with the captain? Is it something to do with another group? Why are people murdering each other? Like, everything seems to be connected to the one person who she was intimate with, who was sent off as well, so they all seem to be connected. That is all I'm going to really say about this book, because like this wasn't a good book for me. Like, I gave it like a really, really average low 3-star, but after like, it was one of those books that after 5 chapters I knew that this was only going to be a 3-star. I was like, I'm not really going to enjoy like the rest of this book, it's just going to be a bit of a blah whatever. But I was invested enough, I was already invested enough that I was like, but I want to find out what happens, and I want to find out how the story goes. So it was just like that. I just kind of felt like, it just felt really like weirdly haphazard for me. It kind of felt like the author didn't exactly know what was going to happen in the chapter until he started to write it. Like, he was writing and he was going to be, well, like, oh, I'll murder this person now, and then I'll have a fire in this, yeah, I'm going to do a fire now. And like, it kind of just felt like all these things kind of kept happening, and I was just like, whoa, like, what is going on? And I felt like we didn't have enough time to really like get to grips with the flotilla, get to grips with the people, like get any connections with anyone. Like, I didn't care about anyone. I feel like we should have known more maybe about the actual like flooding and the disaster that happened that ended the world in the first place. We got like 2 pages of that and that was it, and like would have liked a little bit more as well. So yeah, like, it was just an okay book. I just read it because I was invested, because I wanted to know how it ended, so I gave it a very low 3 stars. There is a second book, this is duology, there's a second book called Soil, but I don't think I'll read it. Yeah. The last book I finished was actually an audiobook, and it's an audiobook I've been listening to for the past month, and it's I Captured the Castle by Dodie Smith. This is kind of a classic book about this family that live in this kind of falling down castle. The father is a writer. He once had like this really, really great best-selling novel, and he hasn't written anything since then. And we are following the 2 sisters. There's Rose, who's the older sister, Cassandra is the younger sister, and we are following the story through Cassandra's diary entries. And just as Cassandra is writing the diaries, the people who own kind of the estate that the castle is on, a person who has inherited the whole land and the castle and the estate comes, and they are 2 American men, and obviously there's going to be some romance, and there is just like some drama, and this is just so beautifully written. Is beautifully like, there's just something really English about it as well, which I love. I didn't know what had happened in this because I had read or had watched the movie on Netflix a few months ago on like just really randomly, so I did know I enjoyed the story, so I was happy enough to go and listen to it and see what the book version of it was like, and I did really, really enjoy it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked the narration of it. It's just one of those really nice kind of stories, and because it's been told in diary entry, it fits really well for an audiobook as well. So yeah, it was just really nice. I just really enjoyed the story again. I really like, it's very much similar to the movie. There wasn't much changes made. Yeah, I just really liked it. I can't really say too much about it. I don't have too much like things I really loved or things I really hated about it. It was just a really enjoyable book for me, a really enjoyable audiobook. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. So that's everything I read this week. I read quite a lot actually. So please leave your comments down below as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.